If you're between 60 and 75 and you're still searching for something or someone to fill that hole inside you, I want you to pause, not out of fear, but out of clarity. Because sometimes the very thing we think will save us, companionship, love, a new relationship, can actually be the poison we drink when we're most vulnerable. At that age, you're not who you were at 25. You've lived through decades of hope, of loss, of building things and watching them fall apart. You've raised children, buried loved ones, made sacrifices you never thought you'd survive. Your soul is seasoned. Your time is precious. And yet, here's the danger. Loneliness creeps in and it whispers seductively that a partner will make everything better. But what if it doesn't? See, by 60 or 70, your patterns are carved deep. Your routines, your values, your way of seeing the world, it's all been refined over a lifetime. To bring another person into that landscape is not a light decision. It's not romantic comedy material. It's war between independence and compromise, between hard-earned peace and sudden chaos. Many people underestimate just how much of themselves they'll have to sacrifice to maintain a relationship in these later years. And at what cost? You're no longer trying to build a future, you're trying to preserve the peace you've fought decades to achieve. That peace matters. It's sacred. And inviting someone into your life at this stage may mean giving up that sacred ground. Suddenly, your decisions aren't yours anymore. Your space becomes shared, your finances become entangled, and in the name of companionship, you risk suffocating under a weight you didn't anticipate, a weight that drains you emotionally, mentally, even physically. And it's not always about conflict. Sometimes it's about silence, the silence of feeling unseen, even while someone sits next to you, the tension of compromise that feels more like self-erasure. You give up your evenings, your quiet coffee rituals, your bookshelf, your habits, your pace, slowly, imperceptibly, until you're no longer sure where you end and the other begins. Is that love? Or is it just fear of being alone? There's something cruel about thinking that your value is only complete with another. And yet, society pushes this myth endlessly, especially for the elderly, as if solitude is a disease and togetherness the cure. But I'd argue the opposite. At that stage of life, solitude can be a sanctuary, a place of reflection, of healing, of deep connection with your own soul. There is wisdom in stillness. There is dignity in solitude. Because here's the hard truth. People at that age carry wounds, expectations, trauma. You're not entering a relationship with a blank slate. You're walking in with a lifetime of memory, and so is the other person. It's like merging two complex systems that were never designed to fuse. And when things go wrong, and they often do at that age, it's not just heartbreak you face. It's upheaval, legal battles, health declines, dependency, regret, the kind of regret that doesn't leave you, the kind that eats at your bones. And what's worse, many people stay, even when it's toxic, even when it's abusive, because they believe they have no other option, because they're afraid of dying alone, afraid of not being wanted, afraid of being irrelevant. And that fear, that's the real poison, not the partner, not the loneliness, but the belief that you are not enough as you are. You're 60 or 75, I urge you to ask, is this relationship adding to my peace or stealing it? Is this love or is it a desperate escape from solitude? There is no shame in choosing yourself. In fact, it may be the most courageous thing you've ever done. You have earned the right to be whole, to breathe freely, to walk through the final chapters of life with dignity, clarity, and strength. Not as a half, but as a complete soul. Alone, perhaps, not lonely. Not if you've learned to sit with your heart and find meaning in your own presence. You're not broken if you're single at 70. You're not forgotten. You're not unloved. Sometimes the deepest love you can offer the world is to fully accept yourself, to embrace the stillness, and to find in that silence not emptiness, but something sacred. So if you're standing at the edge of that decision, whether to open your life to someone new or to walk the rest of the path alone, choose wisely, because peace, once shattered, is not so easily restored. And your soul, it's earned something far better than chaos disguised as companionship. Let that truth settle quietly in your chest. No rush, no noise, just the gentle reminder that you're allowed to be enough, exactly as you are. Late life relationships often demand sacrifices that threaten long-earned peace. By the time a person reaches the age of 60 or 75, they've accumulated not only years, but identity. There is a certain clarity that comes with aging, a clarity formed not through ease, but through decades of hard-fought battles, mistakes, recoveries, disappointments, and small victories. These years shape a person's worldview, habits, routines, and boundaries. They develop a rhythm to life that fits them precisely, like a custom-made suit tailored over decades. That rhythm becomes their safe haven, a place where predictability and peace replace the chaotic urgency of younger years. In this season of life, people are no longer striving to build empires or chase approval. They're seeking calm, meaning, and dignity. When someone enters a new relationship in this stage of life, what often gets overlooked is the sheer magnitude of adjustment required. It is not the same as beginning a relationship in your 20s when both individuals are still figuring themselves out, still malleable, still willing to bend and reshape for the sake of love or attachment. In later years, people are more crystallized, and rightly so. They've done the inner work, they've paid the emotional costs, and yet many still underestimate the price that comes with inviting someone new into that finely tuned system. That price is rarely just romantic. It comes in the form of psychological compromise. Suddenly, your routines, soothing, familiar, stabilizing, become subject to negotiation. The quiet morning you cherish may now require a conversation. The foods you prefer, the bedtime you keep, the shows you watch, even the silence you enjoy, all of these elements, once completely under your control, are now shared space. And the more attached you become, the more of those spaces you unconsciously yield. It begins as a compromise, but often ends as a slow erasure of the very habits that gave you peace to begin with. More than that, the emotional demands of a partner at this stage can be staggering. You may find yourself managing not only your own past griefs and limitations, but theirs as well. Trauma, regret, financial strain, medical issues, unresolved bitterness from earlier relationships. All of it now enters your world. And when two people come together with decades of history, that union is far more complicated than romance suggests. You're not just joining hands, you're joining baggage. And unlike youthful love, where idealism often cushions the hard truths, love later in life tends to come with sharp edges. This doesn't mean relationships can't be beautiful in later life. They can be, but they demand a kind of sacrifice that many are not fully prepared for. And when these sacrifices chip away at the core of your well-being, the result is internal tension. You begin to feel like a guest in your own life. You start walking on eggshells in your own home. You feel responsible not just for your happiness, but theirs. And this level of emotional labor can become exhausting, especially if the relationship lacks mutual emotional maturity. Even the presence of mild conflict can take a heavy toll. In youth, arguments may spark, flare, and pass. But in older age, when energy is finite and emotional resources are thinner, conflict feels heavier, more consequential. You no longer have the resilience to bounce back as quickly, and the emotional hangover from a simple disagreement can linger for days. That emotional taxation adds up over time, and it begins to eat into the very peace you thought a relationship would enhance. Loneliness can seduce you into toxic companionship. It doesn't speak loudly. It whispers late at night when the house is too quiet. It speaks through the stillness of an empty room, through the empty chair across the dinner table, through the long pauses between phone calls. As we grow older, the noise of life starts to fade. Children move away, careers end, routines slow down. And in that silence, loneliness finds its voice. But it rarely comes with a warning. It dresses itself as longing, as a harmless craving for connection. It convinces you that having someone, anyone, is better than facing the emptiness alone. And that's when the danger begins, because loneliness doesn't sharpen your discernment, it clouds it. You start to make compromises you never thought you would. You overlook red flags. You interpret control as care. You convince yourself that friction is just passion. In that vulnerable state, what you truly need, patience, reflection, healing, is pushed aside by the urgency to not be alone. The deeper the loneliness, the louder it screams for relief. In companionship becomes a quick remedy, a distraction, a balm that soothes in the short term but costs heavily in the long term. When you accept someone into your life purely because you're lonely, You give away your power. You surrender your boundaries. You rationalize dysfunction. Toxic companionship doesn't always begin with obvious harm. Sometimes it begins with comfort, with attention, with warmth that later turns into dependency, resentment, or control. And the tragedy is that it's often not even about love. It's about avoiding the pain of solitude. But avoiding pain doesn't lead to peace. It just delays the confrontation. And by the time you realize the cost, you're already entangled, already weary, already too far in to walk away easily. At this age, merging lives means merging deep-rooted patterns and traumas. By the time someone reaches their 60s or 70s, their life has become a mosaic of experiences, some joyful, many painful, all formative. Every decision, every loss, every success has shaped how they see the world and how they protect themselves within it. These patterns are not surface-level behaviors. They are deeply embedded defenses and routines designed to create safety in a world that has often been unpredictable. Introducing another person into that system isn't just about companionship. It's a psychological collision of histories. Each person comes into the relationship with decades of emotional programming. That means old wounds, perhaps from past relationships, childhood neglect, betrayal, or abandonment, are still quietly influencing their reactions, expectations, and fears. You might be sitting at dinner having a simple conversation, and suddenly the other person's tone or silence or a single word triggers something that reaches back 30 or 40 years. And without even understanding why, a calm evening turns into a storm of emotion that neither person fully grasps. This is the invisible weight older couples carry when they try to build something new. It's not just the blending of habits, it's the collision of internal narratives, many of which have never been fully examined or healed. The instinct to protect oneself, to avoid pain, or to control outcomes becomes stronger with age. When those instincts clash between two people, intimacy doesn't deepen, it fragments. Communication becomes guarded, assumptions multiply, and emotional safety becomes elusive. Relationships then become less about love and more about managing each other's emotional landmines. And without deep psychological awareness and mutual grace, the very traumas meant to be soothed through connection end up being reactivated, leaving both people lonelier than they were before they came together. Solitude can be a sanctuary, not a curse. In a culture that often glorifies connection and companionship, it's easy to overlook the quiet power of being alone, especially in later life. Many fear solitude, believing it to be a sign of failure or isolation, but in truth, solitude, when embraced intentionally, offers a space for profound peace and restoration. It allows a person to reconnect with themselves in ways that are rarely possible when constantly entangled in the needs, expectations, and emotions of others. At this age, you've spent decades tending to others, partners, children, colleagues, family, and solitude becomes a rare chance to finally tend to yourself. When no one else's voice is guiding your day, your inner voice becomes clearer. You begin to notice what truly brings you calm, what routines feel nourishing, what ideas spark your imagination. There's freedom in waking up and knowing the day is entirely yours. No emotional negotiations, no compromise, no subtle tension that pulls you away from yourself. And in that freedom, something sacred unfolds. You begin to realize that peace is not the absence of people, it's the presence of alignment with your own soul. In solitude, you can grieve fully. You can heal wounds that were buried under years of distraction. You can sit with the questions you never had time to ask, and slowly, patiently, you can discover your answers. There is dignity in this space. There is control. There is the ability to choose how you spend your emotional energy without guilt or resentment. And that choice, especially at this stage of life, is everything. Solitude becomes less about being alone and more about being whole. It's not about retreating from love, but about returning to yourself before giving that love away again. Choosing yourself in your final chapters is a powerful act of self-respect. After decades of living for others, raising children, sustaining marriages, serving in careers, managing responsibilities, many people reach their later years without ever fully having lived for themselves. There's a quiet tragedy in that realization, a soft grief that speaks not of what was lost, but of what was never allowed to fully bloom. And so, when you finally stand at a point in life where the noise begins to quiet down, you are given a rare opportunity to choose yourself without apology, without explanation, and without fear of judgment. This choice is not selfish, it is earned. It is the natural culmination of a life that has given and stretched and endured. Choosing yourself doesn't mean abandoning love or connection. It means honoring your own voice first, especially when that voice has been silenced or minimized for years. It means paying attention to what your body is telling you, what your spirit needs, and what brings you genuine peace. It means saying no when something doesn't feel right, even if others don't understand. It means walking away from relationships, routines, or responsibilities that drain your energy rather than restore it. At this age, time feels different. You feel its weight and its worth in a way you never did before. Every day becomes a decision. Every moment is a chance to live honestly, to feel deeply, and to move with clarity. And when you choose yourself, you begin to reclaim the parts of you that were set aside for the sake of others. You start to rebuild trust with yourself. You stop seeking external validation and instead find strength in your own presence. This is not an escape from life. It's the beginning of living it on your own terms.